A lawyer stands before a judge, but this time, he's not defending anyone. Is the defendant. And the crimes he committed? They sent 3 innocent people to death row. It is what most people don't realize about the legal profession. The very people sworn to uphold justice sometimes become its greatest threat. Today, I'm revealing 5 cases of attorney misconduct so disturbing, they'll make you question everything you think you know about the people we trust with our lives, our freedom, and our futures. And the 5th case? It might be the most chilling betrayal in American legal history. Before we dive into these cases, you need to understand something crucial. Lawyers aren't just professionals. They're officers of the court. They take an oath. They hold a position of sacred trust that most people never truly comprehend. When you hire an attorney, you're not just paying for advice. You're placing your entire life in their hands. Your freedom. Your family. Your future. And that's what makes these cases so devastating. Because when a lawyer turns criminal, the damage isn't just financial. It's existential. People lose decades of their lives. Families are torn apart. And in some cases, innocent people are executed. But here's the question that haunts every legal expert I've spoken to: how do these attorneys get away with it for so long? The answer will disturb you. And it starts with a man named Michael who seemed like the perfect lawyer. Case number 1. Michael Avenatti. You might recognize that name. In 2018, he was everywhere. Cable news. Magazine covers. He even considered running for president. His client was Stormy Daniels, and he was taking on the most powerful man in the world. Media outlets called him a hero. A champion of justice. But behind that polished image was something far darker. Avenatti wasn't fighting for justice. It was running one of the most elaborate fraud schemes in modern legal history. He stole nearly $15 million from his own clients. People who trusted him with their settlements, their life savings, their futures. One client was a mentally ill paraplegic man who received a $3 million settlement. Avenatti was supposed to protect that money. Instead, he stole every single cent and used it to fund his lavish lifestyle. Private jets. A racing team. $1 million homes. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. And I need you to pay close attention to this part. Because what Avenatti did next reveals something terrifying about how the legal system actually works. See, when his clients started asking questions about their missing money, Avenatti didn't panic. He doubled down. He created fake documents. Forged signatures. He even impersonated bank officials on phone calls. And the State Bar? The organization supposed to protect the public from lawyers like this? They had received complaints about Avenatti years before his arrest. Years. But they did nothing. Let that sink in. The system designed to catch criminal lawyers was asleep at the wheel while Avenatti destroyed lives. And this wasn't unique to him. In fact, the second case I'm about to show you proves this is a pattern. A dangerous, systemic pattern that affects thousands of victims every single year. Case number 2. Mark Dreyer. On the surface, Dreyer had it all. A 250-lawyer firm bearing his name. Penthouse apartments in Manhattan. A yacht. Art collection worth millions. It represented Fortune 500 companies. It dined with celebrities. But Mark Dreyer had a secret. For years, he had been selling fake promissory notes to hedge funds. He convinced sophisticated investors to hand over $700 million for securities that simply didn't exist. $700 million. He forged documents from real companies. He impersonated executives. In one case, he actually walked into a law firm's conference room, pretending to be a representative from a teacher's pension fund, and walked out with $40 million of their money. The audacity was breathtaking. But here's what makes Dreyer's case truly disturbing. The investors Dreyer stole from weren't random individuals. They were pension funds. Retirement accounts for teachers. Firefighters. Police officers. Regular people who spent 30 years serving their communities, only to have their future stolen by a man they never even met. And when the fraud finally collapsed in 2008, right in the middle of the financial crisis, the damage was catastrophic. Pension funds that were already struggling lost everything. Retirements were delayed. Dreams were destroyed. Dreyer received 20 years in federal prison. But here's the thing that keeps investigators up at night. How did someone steal $700 million without a single colleague noticing? 250 lawyers worked in that firm. Partners. Associates. Paralegals. Not one of them raised an alarm. Not one. Which brings us to our third case. And this one involves something far more sinister than money. But everything I've told you so far? That's just about money. And as devastating as financial crimes are, they can eventually be recovered from. The next three cases cannot. Because when attorneys cross certain lines, the damage becomes permanent. Irreversible. And in some cases, fatal. This is where I need you to really understand what's at stake. Case number 3. Kenneth Peasley. For 20 years, Peasley was a respected prosecutor in Tucson, Arizona. He put dangerous criminals behind bars. He was trusted with the power to take away people's freedom. And he abused that power in ways that should terrify every single American. Peasley didn't just bend the rules. He shattered them. He withheld evidence that would have proven defendants innocent. He coached witnesses to lie. He fabricated testimony. And because of his crimes, innocent people went to prison. One man, named Ray Crone, was sentenced to death. Death row. For a crime he didn't commit. Ray Crone spent 10 years in prison. 3 of those years on death row, waiting to be executed for a murder he did not commit. He was convicted almost entirely on bite mark evidence that Peasley presented as irrefutable. But here's what Peasley knew and concealed: the bite mark analysis was deeply flawed. Multiple experts had questioned it. And there was DNA evidence at the crime scene that didn't match Crone at all. Peasley buried it. He buried evidence that would have set an innocent man free, because winning mattered more than justice. When DNA technology finally caught up and proved Crone's innocence, the real killer was identified. A man who had committed multiple other crimes while Crone sat in a cell awaiting execution. Think about that. A murderer walked free for a decade because a prosecutor wanted another conviction on his record. And Peasley? He was eventually disbarred. But he never spent a single day in prison for nearly killing an innocent man. The Crone case wasn't an isolated incident. Across America, prosecutors have engaged in misconduct that has sent thousands of innocent people to prison. Studies estimate that prosecutorial misconduct contributes to wrongful convictions in at least 30% of cases. 60%. And the consequences for prosecutors who cross the line? Almost non-existent. Less than 2% of prosecutors found guilty of misconduct face any disciplinary action at all. It's a system that protects the powerful while the innocent suffer. But our fourth case takes attorney betrayal to an even darker place. Because this lawyer didn't just fail her clients. She actively worked to destroy them. And she did it for the most personal reason imaginable. Stop for a moment. What I'm about to tell you might be the most disturbing betrayal of trust in this entire video. Case number 4. Elizabeth Sanchez was a family law attorney in California. Her specialty? Divorce cases. Custody battles. The most emotionally volatile situations in the entire legal system. And she used that position to wage a campaign of psychological warfare against her own clients. It is how it worked. Sanchez would take on vulnerable women as clients. Women fleeing abusive marriages. Women fighting for custody of their children. And then, systematically, she would sabotage their cases. She would miss court deadlines on purpose. File critical documents. Give terrible advice designed to make her clients lose. Why? Because she was being paid by the opposing side. The abusive husbands. The people her clients were trying to escape. The women who trusted Sanchez lost custody of their children. They lost their homes. They lost everything. One victim described finding out the truth as having her entire reality shatter. She thought she had lost because the system was unfair. She never imagined her own attorney was the one holding the knife. When investigators finally caught Sanchez, they discovered she had been running this scheme for over 5 years. Dozens of victims. Children ripped from their mothers. Families destroyed. And the abusers? They paid Sanchez between $5,000 and $20,000 per case to guarantee their victims would lose. The betrayal is almost incomprehensible. But now we come to case number 5. The one I mentioned at the beginning. And this one ties everything together in a way you won't expect. Case number 5. And this is what I meant when I said some betrayals are fatal. Edgar Steele was a criminal defense attorney who became a white supremacist leader. But that's not why he's on this list. In 2010, Steele was arrested for hiring a hitman to murder his own wife and mother-in-law. He wanted to collect on their life insurance policies. A lawyer. Sworn to uphold justice. Hiring someone to kill his own family for money. But here's the twist that makes this case legendary in legal circles. The hitman he hired was actually an FBI informant. The entire plot was recorded. And when Steele was arrested, his defense was perhaps the most audacious in legal history. He claimed he had been framed. That the recordings were fabricated. That he was innocent. He used every legal trick he knew. Every manipulation technique. Every courtroom strategy he had learned in decades of practicing law. And the jury? Saw right through it. They convicted him in under 6 hours. Edgar Steele died in federal prison, having become the very thing he had spent his career defending against, a convicted criminal. 5 lawyers. 5 betrayals. Millions of dollars stolen. Innocent people imprisoned. Lives destroyed. And in some cases, murder. But here's what connects all of these cases, and what I want you to take away from this video. These attorneys didn't become criminals overnight. There were warning signs. Complaints filed. Red flags raised. And in almost every case, the system designed to protect the public failed. State bar associations that moved too slowly. Courts that trusted credentials over evidence. Victims who were ignored because their accusers wore suits and carried briefcases. The question isn't just how do we stop criminal lawyers. It's how do we fix a system that lets them operate in plain sight. Because right now, today, there are attorneys out there abusing their positions. And until the legal profession takes accountability seriously, the next victim could be anyone. It could be someone you know. It could be you. If you made it this far, you now understand something most people don't. The people we trust the most can sometimes cause the greatest harm. But knowledge is protection. And by watching this, you're already more informed than 90% of people who walk into a lawyer's office. If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future investigations. And I want to know, which case shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments. Was it Avenatti and his stolen millions? Paisley and the innocent man on death row? Or Sanchez and her systematic betrayal of vulnerable women? Your answer might surprise you. And if you want to go deeper into courtroom justice, this video right here exposes another truth the legal system doesn't want you to know.